Hey everyone, welcome to Beginnings, the show that asks, where do creative people come from? My name is Andy. I'm the host of the show and a writer and performer based in Los Angeles, California. I am on day 40 of quarantine and starting to go crazy. How are you all doing? Are you in quarantine? Are you social distancing? I took Mabel for a walk today, and on my block here in Los Feliz, almost nobody was social distancing. Very few people had masks on. So, I expect this all to be over in a week. Anyway, let's forget about that, because I've got a great episode for you that was recorded back in the beginning of January. So what I'm doing now is I'll do 1 week, a new episode taped over Zoom in quarantine. Then next week, something that I taped before this all started, at least until I run out of those episodes. But today's great. This is Jeff Parker. If you don't know who he is, let me read you his bio. Originally from Hampton, Virginia, musician Jeff Parker has been playing music since he was 8 years old. Eventually ending up in Chicago, he became a member of the experimental post-rock group Tortoise in 1996 and also co-founded Isotope 217 and the Chicago Underground Trio. He's worked with everyone from Michelle and Deggiocello to Smog and has released 6 solo albums. His latest, Sweet for Max Brown, was released earlier this year on the None Such Imprint International Anthem. Besides being a huge fan of Tortoise, I think the first album he plays on TNT is the first one that I ever heard. And my roommate in college was a big fan of them, and he got me into them. You don't need to know that part, but little local color. But his solo albums are fantastic. His new one I heard, and I fell in love with it. And luckily, he lived in Los Angeles, and it took a while to, each of us kept getting sick or busy, but he came over, I think, like second week of January, and we talked. Interesting to note, we started talking about anxiety and the political situation for the last 3 years, no matter what, has been a source of anxiety for all of us. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this talk. It's interesting, too, how there's some stuff about Jeff's personality that we start talking about at the beginning of the episode and come to a conclusion about towards the end. I thought it was like a good old existential whodunit. Anyway, thanks so much for listening. If you're new to the show, you can check out old episodes on your podcast app. All of them should be on Spotify, or if you want to download them on beginnings.libsyn.com. I think so. But I've talked to hundreds of musicians and writers and performers and actors and artists. Everyone from Arno Lindsay to Leslie Headland, the co-creator of Russian Doll. So check out those episodes, and if you want to find me on social media, I'm at Andy Beckerman. And stay tuned, I got a lot of cool episodes coming up, including I just talked to Rob Guillory, who is a comics artist and writer. His book Farmhand on Image is one of the best things I've read in a while. And he was the artist on the very popular book Chew. So look forward to that in the future. But for now, let's talk to Jeff.
I was asking you earlier how you felt today. You said you were sick. We've been scheduling this on and off because of both of us getting sick at different places and and the holidays. But you're feeling good today.
Yeah, I feel great.
I'm trying to figure out how I was in a weird mood earlier because we're taping this after, I guess, tensions in between Iran and the U.S. ratcheted down, but there was a good 24 hours where I thought we were going to be back in a Iraq war situation.
Right. Yeah. I've been so busy I haven't been able to keep abreast. But I expected that too. It was weird. I saw the headline that it was over or whatever. I don't believe it. But
well, I don't think it's over, but I think that the idea that it was going to just be like, I remember in 2003, the frustration of so many people being anti-war and it amounting to absolutely nothing. Like the Bush administration just ignored everyone, ignored like a 1 million person march and things like that. Right. And I was like, oh, now there's someone as dumb or dumber than Bush and crueler than him in the White House. And we're just going to repeat or worse the same thing.
Sure.
And I was living on that emotional precipice.
Right.
And then College Humor. I don't know if you know who College Humor is. They're like they're the last online comedy video site that was really doing anything. And they shut down today. And to me, that's like a canary in the coal mine.
Oh wow!
For my business. So
college what?
College Humor.
College Humor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know it.
Yeah. So I'm living in this state of anxiety, I guess. I guess that's where I am. A surreal anxiety.
Wow.
But you seem very calm. So
no, I think it's hard to like exist in any kind of conscious manner nowadays without having a higher level of anxiety, just with the amount of like just just political dysfunction and kind of like really misplaced priorities and kind of, especially if you have children, in school, like kids are freaked out about the environment, because they can't really process. All they know is that shit is fucked up and like they're going to have to live in it. And like when I used to smoke, my daughter used to come home from school every day, freaked out that I was going to die because she knew that I smoked cigarettes because of what she was being taught in school, which is correct that cigarettes give you cancer, but she didn't realize that it festers for a long time and it takes a long time for somebody to die from it. She was just like, oh man, my dad smokes and he's going to drop dead. And kids now with climate change, they're freaked out about it. It's, and we hear about it all the time, at least from my son, for sure.
How old is your son?
He's 8.
So do you catch an anxiety contact high from him?
Yeah. I do, for sure. Well, it's not. It's, it comes and goes, but generally he's like super happy kid, but yeah, when it comes, I definitely catch it.
Is it just because of your kids, or I have a problem erecting boundaries between my emotions and anyone else's emotions. Like if I'm near someone and they happen to have an overpowering emotion, my antenna is up all the time and I'm always constantly like getting attuned to them. Even if I could be a stranger that just like happens to be like very angry near me.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's probably pretty normal.
Is it? I wonder. I wonder if it's sometimes I think about, I only interview writers and musicians and filmmakers and actors and people like that. So I want to pretend like it's a different class of person. I mean, I don't know. In some way, you have to be a little. Well, I don't know. I was about to say you have to be a little more emotionally attuned to do this. But the number of sociopaths that I've met in this business maybe denies that statement.
Oh, wow.
So maybe you don't. Maybe you just have to be able to mimic. Maybe you have to be a good psychopath.
Right.
And be able to mimic other people's emotions. You don't actually have to be attuned to them. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't either.
I mean, do you meet? I don't know. Do you meet sociopaths in music, or do you feel like you're somewhat insulated from? I was about to say the monsters, but insulated from like the business people in some way.
Like sociopaths. No. I mean, they're for sure around in terms of, I mean, there's like crazy fans and stuff like that, you know. I mean, I'm not so much on Facebook anymore, but it was always like a handful of people. Like I would always, you know, I mean, I'm like a politically engaged person, you know, with pretty far left leaning politics.
Mm-hmm.
And if shit is in the air, I would kind of like, you know, post something that I thought information that would be useful to people to push things in direction that I feel things needed to go. And it would always be like, like somebody in my friends or who was just like not having it, you know, trolling, whatever.
I stopped. There was some point, I don't know when, but like I only use social media like Twitter,
Right.
to write jokes or promote shows.
Right.
Facebook, promote shows. Instagram, cat pics here and there, dog pics, promote shows. Because I was just like, it's too. The minute I'm also pretty far left, and so the minute any kind of opinion I might have, I think would. I found out like half my family were Jewish. Half my family, not half, probably like a fifth of my family voted for Trump.
Oh wow!
Not immediate family, by the way. I'm talking about like second cousins and things like that. Mm-hmm. But like a decent number of them.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't want to invite. If I put something out there, it's not going to change anyone's mind. Right. And it's just going to invite people to say shitty things to me. So right. I'm like, I'm done with using these things for anything more than promoting.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
yeah, it's a bummer. I mean, I had to. I keep it minimal for sure.
So you seem like a very calm person in general. I don't know if it's just the way you're feeling today, or if that's a general trait of yours.
I wouldn't say calm. Mellow. Sometimes.
Mellow's good.
Calm. I mean, people who know me know that I have definitely have some angst.
Wait, what are the things that will bring that angst to the surface?
Bring that.
See, I mean,
music. Some musical disagreements will. Which isn't something I'm necessarily proud of. Get better with it.
Yeah,
you know.
So that's interesting. So you're relatively mellow, unless it's an artistic disagreement. And that is it yes. like actual artistic, or is it like some businessy kind of thing?
Businessy things for sure.
Yeah,
like that can do it. Like you, I don't know. Sometimes, just when somebody doesn't dig something that you think you can't really understand for like not really a good reason,
mm-hmm.
that can get under my skin.
There's when you're writing a script and you send in the script to like the network or to the studio or whatever to get notes beforehand, and they're just noting things just to note them. And also a lot of times you're getting notes from someone who doesn't have an artistic background or not a writing background. And they're just like, whatever they're feeling at that moment, they're like, oh, I don't like this joke. And it's like, why? And there's no real reason. They just like, that's whatever their gut says. And then they say it, or they come up with a reason afterwards, but it's not, it doesn't really make much sense when you're doing it. That's the kind of stuff that I think most gets me.
Right.
But I think I'm a fairly angry person. Well, okay, hold on. I say that and then I'm like, all right, Andy, I think there are things. I don't think I'm an angry person, but I think it's there inside me in a way that it feels like you are just very even keeled. I like mellow. I like the way you phrase it, mellow. That I don't know. I'm like, it's, I don't know if you can sense it from me where you can sense that there is a buried anger somewhere that through being an adult, I have learned that you just keep it down.
Well, I can kind of see it.
Yeah, in a way, I don't get that from you.
Oh, huh. Wow, that's weird.
So I guess my question coming off of that is like, have you always been a very mellow person?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. No, but I guess I have been. But the thing is, if you get to know me, people who know me know that I definitely have an edge. I mean, I think I have to, and with them in music, I mean, it's like a passion. I mean, it's not like, I'm not bullshitting with music at all.
Yeah.
And it's like not, I feel very strongly about the direction that I go in with the art that I make, and that kind of that'll bring it out of you, for sure. That's what I mean, I guess, sometimes I have to defend things that I believe in, and that'll kind of get under my skin when I have to do that.
Yeah. I used to I've mellowed out a little bit, I think, because I realized I was an asshole. But I remember the first band I was in, I was, I had just very strong beliefs about that. I'm like, no, this has to be like this. If it goes to this chord, then it sounds like every other fucking song, but it has to be. Right. But if we go to a C sharp minor, then, who uses C sharp minor? Right. I don't know. But they're like, but it was not I didn't know how to collaborate well. I don't think I learned how to collaborate well until therapy. I think therapy was what made me a better person and a better artist. Maybe. Wow. I don't know. Maybe it made me too tolerant of other people, and then my own beliefs get mushed in there. I don't know. I don't. But you, even as a child, were you a mellow person? But then you had when did you start playing music?
I started playing music. I guess I was about 7 or 8. No, and I wasn't mellow as a kid. I had a temper.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. I still have. Yeah, you learn how to control it.
Right.
But when I was a kid, I'd throw a tantrum for sure.
Well, I had a friend who was a very angry person, or not very angry, but he was very mellow. But then he would just, if he was angry, he would let it out, and he would smash something of his.
Oh, wow.
And I was I kind of was as I was searching for an identity, and this is a good friend of mine, and I'm like, oh, well, if he can let his anger out, maybe I can do the same thing. And so there was a period of 4 or 5 years where I'm I guess it's acceptable for me to kick a trash can if I'm angry.
Right.
And then after 4 or 5 years, I'm maybe my best friend's example isn't the best example of emotional health or emotional maturity.
Yeah, I find it's good. As a parent, one thing, a technique that you learn in dealing with your children is to try and redirect. You just try and, have them redirect emotion that's going to manifest into bad behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that adults, you just learn how to make it into something else. That music kind of provides me that outlet. There's a certain, like I said, the passion. I can be pissed off and just beat the shit out of my guitar, kind of on when I play,
Yeah.
I actually do that a lot. Music helps me for sure.
So it's interesting. Okay, that's interesting that you channel it. Yeah, I think I have the same kind of, not necessarily music, but just writing or something like that. That if I'm having that I can either let this stuff be stored in my brain or in my body in some way, or I can write and just let out that emotion into whatever it is. It's not necessarily the same feel. There's a physicality with playing music that isn't there with writing.
Right. Yeah.
Where it's you are legitimately, you are physically, you are it's embodying that emotion in some way as you are playing.
Right. Yes.
And of course, for the listener, I just mimed putting fingers on the frets of a guitar. So.
Right.
But okay, so you have this attitude, you kind of understood this through understanding your children and how to push their emotions into I was going to say correct way, but how to push them into dealing with their emotions in a healthy way.
Yes.
Were you also when you were growing up, what was your relationship with your parents? Were they able to do that with you to kind of, is that why you started playing music, to kind of channel these things in a healthy direction?
No, but I think any parent who's just concerned with the safety and development of their children kind of just figures out how to do it in one way or another. But no, I didn't get into music as in, therapeutic. I was just genuinely liked it. And my parents, I don't know. They were great parents. My mother, who's still alive, she still is. Yeah, I had a good relationship with them. Healthy, not super close, but endearing for sure.
When you say not super close, it makes me think of, I always give the example of my parents, who I say are, it's warm, but not, the relationship is warm, but not deep. I think is a good way of categorizing it.
I would say the other way around.
Oh, interesting.
Deep. Well, deep. And I'm I always use this, and I guess I harbor some kind of resentment for people. You have, people who oh man, I call my mom every day. People who call their parents every day. And they're I don't have that kind of relationship with my parents, but it's, I don't know. I'm happy to talk to them whenever I do talk to them.
When you do though, do you talk about, when I say it's warm but not deep, I just mean that they seem uncomfortable when I broach emotional topics.
Oh.
And honestly, if I hadn't gone to therapy, I would have been just like them, right? Where we just talk about very surfacey things, and that's what it is. But you can talk about deeper things. You can talk about about emotional topics, or about how you're feeling, and your parents or your mom now reciprocates and is able to also?
Sometimes. Yeah, sometimes, Yeah.
Okay. Well, then I want to. This is all very. I'm trying to unravel and trying to think about like what leads you into playing jazz. What leads you into? I think it's interesting. Chicago always fascinates me because that's where you have the most kind of experimental of all. You have, it's a big jazz scene. It's a big improv scene for comedy, and I want to believe that there's some kind of connections there, or there's something about Chicago that fosters that kind of thing. I'm curious about, what leads you there. You grew up in Virginia. You'd said before, I think I read online, Hampton,
yes,
Virginia.
Yeah.
I mean, what is Hampton like? What part of Virginia is it?
Oh man, it's in the Tidewater region, which is southeastern Virginia, which is close-ish to North Carolina.
Okay.
Right on the Chesapeake Bay, right on the Atlantic Ocean.
Okay, so it's southern.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's amazing things about it, like the landscape. It's super beautiful. We moved down there because my parents were teaching at a university down there. My father was a professor there, and my mother taught at an elementary school, lab school on the college campus where he was teaching. So there was that. Culturally was great. As a HBCU that I kind of spent most of my elementary school years at, which was awesome. Around there, though, it's some dark. It's like very military, Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines all there.
Ew.
It's also the Bible Belt, so it's like
Oof.
Pat Robertson, Jerry Falwell, like super Pentecostal. I don't know if you know what that is.
I do.
Christian broadcasting, that like real Southern Baptist, like
Speaking in tongues.
very conservative, politically conservative, religious community there, which is pretty toxic to progress.
Right.
So, it was that, and also the Southern thing, which was, the elementary school in my neighborhood was Robert E. Lee Elementary School. The junior high was Jefferson Davis High Junior High. So it's like Confederate, Southern thing down there with the religion, but also like progressive things. The ocean. Like, it's a really difficult place for me to grow up in a lot of ways, just because I was, I was like smart kid, like weird kid. I was into music and like art and stuff. I didn't really have much access to it. I knew that I wanted to get out of there, like as soon as I finished school. That's why I went up to Boston, because I knew that there wasn't anything really for me down there except like a few good friends.
Yeah. I've had guests on the show before that grew up in the South, or grew up specifically Virginia, that talk about it like it was trapped in two different time periods, or trapped in many different time periods at once, and that you kind of have this the Confederate past is still sitting there.
Sure.
Whereas like I think one guest, she said that it was in New York or whatever, they knock down the past mostly and they build something new over it. But all that stuff, I remember Naomi and I were in Amsterdam over the summer just for a little trip, and it was so weird how there were these old buildings from like the 1600s, but they had a Starbucks in them. or a like stationery store or something like that. And I find that to be very strange, and I wonder if there's that similar kind of strange temporal strangeness. I don't know how do you want to characterize it in where you grew up.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, same. A lot of the same clinging to that past, but it's also, you know, I mean that's the old part. I mean the city. It's also like the area has been developed a lot. You know, there's a lot of like new industry that kind of comes and goes. A lot of it is military. There's like corporate stuff. I mean, basically, it felt like the suburbs, man. I mean, it was like, you know, housing, what do they call them, like subdivisions, you know, neighborhoods where all the houses are the same. I mean, that's kind of
right.
That's kind of what it was like where I grew up. You know, I mean, they kind of, and I don't necessarily, I mean, I don't want to like say bad things about the area. I mean, because I had like so many great memories. I mean, I don't have any regrets growing up there or anything. But, you know, they kind of, people cling to that stuff like heritage, you know, like it's the difference between people like history and people claiming it as their heritage is it's a cloudy, like blurry line that doesn't really make any sense. And this is, I mean, and this is like, I know plenty of black people down there who feel that way, you know that, well, that's part of our heritage, you know, and I'm just kind of like, what? Like, I don't get it, you know. I think that it's not cool to have kids going to schools that are named after fucking Confederate war heroes, man. I mean, that should not be happening, you know. That's like it's not cool to like honor those people. I mean, you should put it in a museum, but don't tell kids that a fucking Confederate war hero, racist fucking slave owner who was fighting to keep slavery is somebody that they should fucking honor as a hero, you know. And I think it's a responsibility of the government to take a stand, you know. I don't think I don't think that is debatable.
Yeah.
Not to me.
Yeah, no.
You know?
It's so strange because because race and class are so repressed here that I think it's interesting. Like, you can paper over it in northern states, right? And you can pretend that even though like New York schools have some of the worst segregation in the country, if not the worst segregation in the country, but because everyone has these kind of like pretensions to be woke and they say the right things, or they are at least near saying the right things, that you can kind of be like, well, it's okay here. But like, it seems like it's much more when you have a school named after Robert E. Lee, or you have a, you know, row of Confederate war memorials still, you know, statues still in like the town square or whatever, you know, the contradiction is like laid bare, and it's there in your face the whole time. And you're growing up living in this kind of the tension between those things. Does that make sense at all? Like, It must be a weird thing to grow up in.
It was a weird thing to grow up in. Like, not even consciously. I mean, at the time, it was just kind of around. It wasn't even until I got older and was able to leave that I even really understood it, you know.
I mean, when do you start to get clued into the kind of the weirdness of that tension?
Well, it's there. I mean, you get clued into the weirdness of the tension just from living there. But to see it, to be able to see kind of step back and then see the way that it's reinforced culturally is that's when it becomes you can kind of pinpoint the problem. You know, there was always like weird stuff. I mean, I'd have like, you know, I was a kid in like the early 80s. Like I was, I don't know, 12, 13, and the Dukes of Hazzard was on TV. Mm-hmm. So I'd have friends, you know, white friends at school to have like rebel flag T-shirts on and shit. And like, and you know, their dad would have like a hot rod and they'd like play Dixie as like a horn and shit. And I didn't really think anything of it. I remember my best friend at the time came over to my house and he had a rebel flag T-shirt on and my mom saw it. And she was just like, "What are you doing wearing that shirt?" And he was just like, "No, Dukes of Hazzard, Miss Parker." And she was like, "Huh, you don't even know what that means." And it was like weird. And I didn't really think anything of it. But, you know, it would, yeah, it was very strange, man.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I remember Dukes of Hazzard was on repeats when I was a kid in the 80s. And I don't know, I guess I saw it when I was like 5, maybe, or 6 or something like that, 1985, 1986, somewhere around there. And no one told... You had no idea that the Confederate flag was bad.
Right.
That, or, I mean, the flag itself is not bad, but like what it stood for is monstrous. And you don't, you know, there's no like warning. It's not like a TV show where like at the end they're like, "By the way, this was made, we did think through this. This was made in the 70s and we weren't conscious of what it meant for whatever reason."
Yeah.
Like, you know, there should be like a warning at the end of it, like there is at the end of like a special episode about like suicide or something like that, right. Where, you know, at the very end they're like, "If you're thinking of anything like this, please call this number."
Right.
But you were like, but that's just the atmosphere.
Yeah.
In Virginia,
just
specifically,
for sure.
I mean, it's not only just it's that what's strange to me is this kind of like weird hodgepodge of cultures that you're talking about. You have this, like you're saying, you have this beautiful ocean there that's just kind of like, you know, whenever I go to like some a rich friend's house, like they have a lake house or they have, you know, something up the coast here, and you go to their house and there's this beautiful view. You're like, "Oh, okay, I see why like you might want to have a house like this, because it's very inspirational." You know, you get that feeling in your chest when you're like, look out their giant picture window at the sea or something like that. All right, so you have that there, but you also have this kind of like military culture, which is very, which at its core is this kind of like symbol. I don't know about symbol. I don't know what word I'm looking for, but is the imperial project of the United States is right there in your face, and the violence that is part and parcel of that. And then you have the South, the kind of retrograde and overt and covert racist feelings in the South, and you also have this kind of like intellectual hub because you're at a college. Your father's a professor and your mom's a teacher there.
Yeah.
So that seems like a strange quilt of cultures. I don't know how to...
Yeah, I mean, that's very... I mean, there's no real... I mean, man, the Southern culture is beautiful. There's much beautiful things about it, you know. Those things are just part of it. I mean, you can... Look at I mean, a lot of people join the military just to be as a way of having a future that's secure.
Sure.
You know, it's like a job. I mean, there's mobility. There's like super pinch like benefits, you know, and you know, people love the ideal of this country.
Right.
You know, and some people want to fight for it. I mean, that's like, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I definitely can't judge people for trying to invest in their future. I mean, that's only part of it. That's why I said I tried to preface my my whatever tangent that I ended up going on by saying that there were many beautiful things about growing up in the South. I mean, it is culturally so much beauty there. But the other stuff for me growing up was weird, and definitely got weirder after the Trump era. When I started to like look back on that stuff.
Yeah.
And like, you know, and I started to think about, you know, reevaluate or re-examine my upbringing down there, you know.
Like, is there a specific thing that you thought of?
No, just like weird memories, you know, a lot of memories, weird interactions with kids at school.
Huh.
Kids' parents. I mean, just stuff like that. Even what I was saying, you know, my best friend wearing a rebel flag t-shirt and my mom like kind of reprimanding him. I had another best friend whose parents were like, I remember I went over to his house. I was probably like 13, maybe 14. And they had a piano in their living room, and on the living room, on the piano, they had a copy of the Moral Majority newsletter, which, you know what that is?
That Ralph Reed? Is that part?
No,
is he one of them? One of the?
I don't know
like
who that is. It's Jerry Falwell.
Oh, okay.
It's his, you know, his followers were called the Moral Majority.
Yeah.
And, you know, obviously my friend's mom was a follower, or at least sympathetic to it. And they had a copy of the newspaper on their piano. And I remember I saw it. And, you know, I mean, my parents were progressive. I mean, they were intellectuals. And I knew that the Moral Majority was fucked up when I was like 12, 13, like racist and homophobic and like, you know. And I saw it and I asked my friend, I was like, what are you guys doing with that? And my friend looked at it and he was like, oh, I don't know. And he asked his mom, he said, Mom, what are we doing with this? And his mom was like, oh, there's nothing in there that isn't true. And I was like, oh man, this is my best friend. I mean, we were in bands, like we were in school band, and he was like a really talented musician. And, you know, we had band, we were like played in bands together and stuff. Even back then. But it's just stuff like that I would think about, you know, who's around you, and like you could just be. But it's also kind of beautiful because we were like living together, like in a way that people don't do that now, you know, because it's of, you know, which is another dark thing about culturally, is how people can kind of like make their own social bubble where like you don't have to interact with those people nowadays if you don't want to, you know. It's just like all my friends are on, you know, Facebook, or you weed them out. Algorithms that like make you not fucking read the news that you don't want to read. And I mean, that's like crazy stuff.
There is, but to protect myself, I have gerrymandered the people who I see on Facebook or something like that, where I'm just like, it's one thing to interact with, like they have their beliefs, you have your beliefs, and you just like talk about movies you've seen or whatever. It's another thing to like log on to Facebook or something and see someone and be like, I think the Jews should go back to Israel. And it's like,
right.
what the fuck are you talking about?
Right.
And I'm just like, I'm going to mute you or whatever.
Sure.
So like there is I mean, it is like definitely a symptom of the Trump era. I think, I mean, it's been there forever, but the tensions boiling over into outright. I mean, you could, you know, your friend's mom was, a follower of Jerry Falwell, of televangelist Jerry Falwell, who went to jail, if I remember correctly. Didn't he have an affair and went to jail?
Did he? I don't know. I don't think he's alive anymore.
Yeah. Well, now his son is the head of. Is Jerry Falwell the Liberty University?
Yeah,
Kind of.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. His son is the head of Liberty now, and it's very strange. I read an article about it where it kind of went into he's used Jerry Falwell Jr. Had a coup and ousted his brother from they were supposed to split Falwell's riches, and he kind of ousted his brother from the business, and him and his wife have wrested control of a lot of things, and then they've used Liberty University as a way to enrich their friends.
Oh wow.
And I think that's the tip of the iceberg of the weird crap that they've done. But yeah, it's you as a child at least could, no one was going to be overt. But I do wonder, what did that mean for your friend's mom to be a follower of Falwell? If that did, what her actions were because of that, and if they were harmful in some way. I don't know if it's better for it to be out in the open or not. I don't know.
Yeah, I wonder too. I mean, they were. Yeah, I don't know.
But at least as a child, it was it was there, but it was at the most simmering. It never really overflowed into actual tensions.
No.
Yeah. So do you grow up do you internalize that kind of simmering tension? Do you were you able to kind of wall yourself off from it in some way? I know that's a weird question. Yeah. I realize that's a weird question as I'm asking it.
No, I mean, you just kind of, just the way we deal with stuff now. I mean, I had my community of people who were cool, and I just hung out with them, and we listen to Steely Dan and shit. But yeah, no, I don't know.
No, I wondered that because I grew up in Pennsylvania as a Jew in a very Christian area. And it definitely, I credit it as being one of the things that started pushing me off from mainstream culture. Again, I'm kind of asking about how do you end up playing jazz for a living, or how do you end up doing something like that? I wonder what these early things are that start pushing you off in that direction. I don't think it's a one-to-one thing. I grew up in this place and now I do this. I grew up in Indianapolis and now I race cars or whatever. I don't think it's a direct line like that. But I do think there are certain things that start off in childhood pushing us in a certain direction.
Sure.
And then you can either, you can accept that direction and go with it, or you can fight against, you can do whatever you want when you're conscious and an adult.
Yeah.
But at least those things. So I wonder if there's a similar kind of oh, well, I am capital O other in some way in this area.
There was some of that for sure.
I mean, was it super white?
No, where I grew up.
Yeah.
No, it was really pretty not diverse, but it was black and white people. Not many Latino, I don't know what it is now, Latinx. Not many at that time. Not many Jewish people, not many Asians. It was mostly just a lot of black and white people, mostly. I think it's different now, but back in the 70s and 80s, no.
But there is some kind of black community for you to.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Be part of there.
Oh yeah, big time. Yeah, I mean that. Well, another thing about growing up there in the region is high school football is huge.
Oh, even in Virginia.
Oh man, especially there. I mean, it's huge.
Huh.
It's like a big, big, big thing. Like my high school that I went to was actually had the number one ranked high school football team in the country for like decades. But because high school football is huge, high school band is huge. So there's a lot of musicians from where I grew up because there were like really strong music programs in the schools because of marching bands at football games.
Was this where you became proficient? You're not just like playing, like, I mean, I had a guitar in high school and I was like, I could play Pavement songs or like something like that. And, I was fairly sloppy, but I didn't become proficient until college when I was in a band and you had to like,
right.
I was playing live in front of people. I couldn't fuck around.
Right.
So is this where you start you start playing when you're like, it was 8, I think you said?
Yeah.
Is this where you start to get good? Where you start to learn techniques?
No. I mean but it's where I first played in a band was in my junior high school band. And our band director was actually really good. I mean, we had like an award-winning junior high school band, and he was very like pretty strict, but also he made us proud that we were in a band that sounded really good. And it was the first time that I played music with other people and knew that it sounded really good. But I played guitar. I played trombone in school band, concert band, and I played guitar in the jazz band. But I played guitar before I started playing in the school band.
Mm-hmm. I mean, are you thinking about this in terms of, oh, it would be nice to do this for a living at this point? Or is this just like, oh, this is a fun thing. I enjoy playing this. It feels good to play music.
Yeah, it was more that. Yeah, I didn't really consider pursuing it professionally, I don't think, until I was well into high school. Probably like my junior year of high school. Like things just kind of started to weed themselves out. Like I was into sports, like I played baseball, which I liked a lot, but I was never great at it.
Mm-hmm.
Certain things academically in school. I mean, I was never like the best student in school. Music, it came to me really easily. I really liked doing it. And I knew that I knew that I liked doing it and that I was kind of good at it.
Mm-hmm.
But when I went to college, I was being really practical about it. I went to Berklee because I wanted to be like a session musician, kind of. Like I said, I was in the Steely Dan and stuff. And I was like, read Guitar Player magazine, and they'd have like all the like Wrecking Crew guys in there and stuff. And I was kind of like, oh man, I want to do that. I'm going to go to college and learn how to do that. Of course, my mind got totally exploded when I went to school and like things became art and, composition and like became totally different. But, I don't know. My parents were teachers, so I didn't really have a choice. I knew that I kind of had to go to college. It's kind of like wired into me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I was being practical about being professional, even though as a professional, I try and remember that I wanted to play music because I liked it. And, doing something for a living can take that part away.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I try and really like keep it not professional in a lot of ways, even though as a professional musician, I have to like hunt down work and do things to make money, like, but I'll only go so far.
Yeah, no, I've been trying. This year has been. This year, by the way, we are like 7-8 days into 2020. But like I've thought about I've thought this is continuing from a feeling I was having last year where I was like getting too much into the business part of this, and I was like only thinking about making things if I could sell them, and I was like, why do I feel shitty? And it was because I was only thinking I got in this like weird commercial mindset moving out here. And I really want to just start again, making things because I enjoy making for the sake of making them. Mm-hmm. Not everything, obviously, like, hustling to make money too is important. But wait, what was your dad's discipline? What was he a professor of?
He was like taught like sociology.
Oh, interesting.
Kind of. Yeah, I mean, I know some of that. It was like my parents were both, my father was a sociology major in college. He got his master's I think his master's was just in education. Yeah.
but it was kind of an intellectual household.
Yeah, in many ways. Yeah.
I mean, there's not that music isn't intellectual, but there is something more about the fact that it flows from your body. It's more physical than it is an intellectual activity. I would think jazz is primarily physical first. I don't know. Just because of the way, like, especially improvising, I would assume I know that, like, this is the metaphor, at least. You can tell me how off it is. But I know, like, from doing comedic improv, you make choices in the moment. There's obviously like thought processes, but it's more like a sport than it is a intellectual practice. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. I think the parallels are there. I mean, honestly, I think music is really intellectual. I mean, and I think it can be. And I know actually what attracted me to jazz as a kid was because it appealed to my intellect. It was like, I could tell, I mean, it was like the musicians were very studied. You could tell, like, it was like a super high level of craft, and there was math and science behind it. Like if you listen to like, I don't know, Charlie Parker or like Bud Powell, like any of the musicians from the 40s. I mean, that's like really intellectual music. I mean, they're improvising, but it's in a very like rigid framework of rules. And their challenge is to be as creative within that as possible. It's like not random at all.
Right.
And I knew that when I listened to it when I was a kid. I was like, man, what are these guys doing? And that's kind of why I got into it. I mean, and I am attracted to kind of the brainy parts of making music. Yeah, in some ways. I mean, I also try and keep it human for me. But man, I mean, musicians are some of the like smartest people, most intellectually engaged people I've ever met, for sure.
Yeah. I guess there's even like, it's also very literary in the sense of like referencing.
Yeah.
I don't see that in a lot of pop music. There's a handful, maybe like I've seen in like Destroyer albums where there's a literariness to Dan Behar's music. A literariness.
I don't know this Destroyer.
He's great. And where he references himself, he references other musicians in his lyrics in a way that I don't see in a lot of things. But I think there's a lot of that in jazz. A lot of like literary, a literary feeling to it. I don't know what the noun I want, but feeling is fine.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess maybe I was thinking of just the actual. I do like that idea of saying like it's boundaried. It's bounded, and that's where it's not just whatever. It's not just anything at any moment.
Yeah,
right.
Not
it's the same. I think of do you know the French group Oulipo? They were French writing group. They're still around, I think, probably, but they were mostly doing a lot of their writing in the 60s and 70s. But basically, like, they had these mathematical constraints to their work. Like the big one is George Perec wrote a book called in English, at least it's called A Void.
Oh.
And he wrote it without using the letter E.
Oh, wow.
And part of their thing was that the constraint had to, in some way, it couldn't just be random bullshit. It had to be, in some way, have some kind of literary value for the work you're writing. So not only does it not use the letter E, but
in the whole book.
Yeah.
Damn.
But the letter
How
E,
did he do that?
it's really cool. But that's also central to the narrative of the book. It couldn't just be like, all right, you can't use the letter E, you're just going to write bullshit now. It's that the missing E is the point of the book.
Mm-hmm.
And so I assume that there is some kind, it's more like that, where there are constraints and you are learning how to use those constraints in the most creative way possible.
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's partly why I was attracted to jazz as a kid, for sure.
It's there's just jazz that I like. Mm-hmm. I'm not knowledgeable enough to know anything. I just know, like, oh yes, Thelonious Monk or Ornette Coleman or whatever. I'm like, yes, that is good in my ears.
Right.
So I think I misspoke a lot when I was like, it's the physicality, because I was thinking about because the way you're saying it, I was like, oh, that's just that's improv. That's like comedy. That's
Yeah. That's.
I mean, the most intellectual that, like, at UCB they teach the most the Harold. You have to you have 3 beats of a that have a game. Each beat has the first beats have a game, each one of them, and then the second beats, and then you have a group game to kind of like cleanse the palate. Then the second beats of all those first beats where you heighten the game in some way or play it in a different way, and then another group game, and then you have third beats where they all start melding into each other.
Oh wow! Huh.
So it comes to kind of this crescendo. And that's the form that I was taught when I
Harold. You said?
Yeah, it's called Harold. It was
that's cool. It's like an acting or improv.
Yeah, it's the at UCB at the theater here in New York. They have Harold Night. That's like what all the students, if you get on a team there.
That's Upright Citizens Brigade.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which came out of
Second City.
Improv Olympic, I think, actually, in Chicago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I don't know why I was like, it's just you're moving your hands. I think when I thought of it in terms of like, there is some kind of, what I was thinking of, like, when you are performing more than when you're composing. When you're performing, you're just there in the moment. When I do improv, it's the most in the moment I ever am. Or when I'm performing on stage,
sure,
I'm never more in the moment than I am in that space.
Yeah.
And so I'm not, so like, even though my intellect is going, and I'm like, and there are moments where I stop to think of a joke or stop to like make a choice where I'm like, oh, this is the better choice to make or the funnier choice to make. Mm-hmm. It's still very much bodily. Like, I guess this is the thing. I mean, we're at the very end, but like, I've spent my childhood in my head, very intellectual, very rational, mm-hmm. and kind of repressing the emotional side of myself. And then as I'm an adult now and I'm like bringing that back to the forefront, I'm really trying to become a full human being. Mm-hmm. I mean, were you had this, like, I mean, I guess to wrap around back to the beginning of this talk too, you grew up in this kind of intellectual household, but what, did you repress your emotions? Or do you think you were a full person, a full, integrated person from your childhood on, or was it ever something you had to like kind of recapture?
Yeah, that's a no. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't feel like I'm like that. I don't think I've ever been like that. I've always been pretty calculated in my interactions. Deliberate, I would say, which is also another reason why I got into jazz. At least, well, more like modern jazz, like bebop, and because it seemed, like I said, it didn't seem random.
Right.
And I had to, as an improvising musician, I had to train myself. I had to train myself to not play impulsively, like not play whatever I wanted whenever I wanted to. I wanted to make more sound, more deliberate choices, because that's just who I am. I mean, I'm not an unhinged kind of person. I mean, that's not like, I don't, for better or for worse, I mean, that's kind of who I am. And a part of it was just me trying to be honest and comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. Sometimes I think, I don't know. I don't like music where it feels like really self-indulgent. I like it to be more considerate of an environment that it is invading.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. In some way, you were always disciplined.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think I think maybe that I feel like there's a better adjective for it than that, because I don't feel so. I think deliberate is as best way as I can describe it. Like not disciplined in terms of there being like strict protocol that you adhere to.
Right.
It's more like being very deliberate with the choices that I make. I mean, even when I'm talking to you like this, I mean, when I pause, I mean, I'm kind of like, man, I don't want to I mean, I want it to be clear. I want you to understand what I'm talking about, and I feel like I've always been like that,
No, I understand exactly, because I was thinking, as you're saying, again, I'm kind of just like throwing things out, and then I'm like, oh no, wait, you're right. No, you're, because I'm thinking about like the same thing, like the difference between like when I was shitty at improv and when I was good at improv was making deliberate choices in the moment,
right?
Of where I'm like, we're taking my instinct and marrying it to my intellect. In a way that where the deliberate choices I was making in the moment I wasn't just like there was a time where I would just follow my instinct and it was either good or bad, but I was just following my instinct because I was just like panicking because I'm like, I had to make a choice. I had to say something in the moment or whatever. And then I'm like, oh no, when I got good at this, or when I got good at like being saying funny things on stage, was when I learned how to have those when those things started to flow together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you feel like it was a thing? Did you have techniques that you relied on, or did you just become better at like dealing with certain circumstances in terms of knowing what to expect?
I mean, part of it's being comfortable on stage, like learning how to like being okay. I think part of it was also a confidence thing. I got good at improv when I got my first professional comedy writing job.
Wow.
And then I'm like, oh, well, I got this job because I'm good. So that must mean I'm good. Right? They liked my packet, so they hired me. Okay, well, then I must be funny. So I can trust myself more. So it was like a confidence and trust thing that really let me relax and into it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does. Yeah. A lot of sense.
Did you, this will be the last question, but did you, like yourself, when you got good, was it something similar? Was there, or was it just like, oh, I trained and I learned these things and I've practiced, I've practiced so much of my life and I'm just good now. I've trained myself into this. Or was there like a psychological component like there was for me?
No, I mean, one, I don't really even feel like I'm that good. I can kind of like I've settled into doing what I can do, you know. I guess I've had some mentors who helped me with confidence. I mean, I was actually just talking to my daughter about this a couple days ago. I mean, I used to play a lot with a great tenor saxophone player from Chicago named Fred Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
And Fred, I mean, you know, I was playing like improvised music with him, which was, you know, you just show up, no repertoire, no aesthetic, and you just like show up and play. And I had an idea of things, but I didn't know him super well. And like a lot of times you're playing with musicians you're meeting for the first time. And I was really tentative, you know, I didn't really know. And Fred kind of told me, you know, you should you make good musical choices, you know, like be confident in it. And you know, eventually you just kind of get better. Yeah, I think confidence. I mean, I actually just talked to a writer today, and he asked me he's like, oh, I saw that you don't consider yourself a jazz musician. And he was like, and I said, I mean, I don't. Kind of. I mean, I do socially, but musically I don't, because I don't want to feel like I can't do whatever I want with whatever music that I'm making.
Right.
Like I kind of trick myself in my brain to like, so that I don't have baggage with it, you know?
Uh-huh.
I mean, and that's kind of, I mean, I don't know if I'm getting away from your question that you asked, but you know, a lot of it is confidence, and that is almost a technique. You're like, okay, well, if I don't believe it, I'm like, then I'm not it, you know, like you have to kind of trick your psyche into like making you behave in certain ways. You go change your relationship with like whatever you're dealing with. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Thank you for coming over and being on the show.
Oh man, my pleasure. I had no idea what to expect. It was awesome.
Oh, I'm glad. Well, thanks again, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye, oh, 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 bye.